Hey guys, back with another update on the Vaterra Ascender project. Now, I actually spent a ton of time working on this project this last week, although you probably can't tell because it's pretty much all focused in this one little area behind the cab. And that's because that I spent most of the week designing and 3D printing a scale 3D engine for the back of this car. Now, I do plan to compete with this as a Class 1 Sorca vehicle, and I need scale points to try and make this as competitive as possible. Now, with that, in the scale rules, you get a certain amount of points for having a 3D engine, and that's what I was going after. 3D printing is very lightweight, very easy to model, and then rapid prototype. So, I took advantage of being able to have a 3D printer here at the house, and I worked on this pretty much all week. Now for some gratuitous use of my scale cherry picker here. Here you can see a second motor. Now I printed a handful of these actually just as I was going through the steps, changing little things here and there, adjusting them, making a new print of this part, whatever the case may be, but I ended up with a couple of them when I was all said and done. Now, my printer is a cheap Robo 3D printer. The total cost on getting it here was under $1,000, plus you do need modeling software and things like that, but that's something that I've had since I've been doing that for quite some time. But this here is basically the finished product coming off of my printer. Now this is a multi-piece design. There's an engine block and then a bottom part of the engine block, kind of like an oil pan, not really. I went with a very generic look for this. I have a pretty tight area that I had to use in this car, and I went with something that was diesel-esque, 4-cylinder, just pretty basic, not trying to go over the top with scale details, really just trying to sell the point of it and then get the job done with a little bit of detail work here and there. Now, again, I've got the engine block, the bottom part. It's also got a head and then a valve cover, basically, as well as this rear portion of a bell housing or transmission. That's basically to kind of fill the gap that I had left in the rear of the car here. And then I've got a couple of wings basically built onto that part of the transmission, and that is to mount this. These two holes mount up to the top of that GCM transfer case that I've already got in there. So, pretty simple little mounting situation with two simple screws. Again, this whole thing's very lightweight, nothing to it basically. I do have a couple of generic intake and exhaust manifolds on it. They're the exact same part one side to the other. Again, just something generic to get the point across. I also printed a small 3D turbo basically that goes on the top, and I will plan on adding some exhaust and intake tubing just to kind of have a little bit of fun with it. And you do get more scale points for exhaust. So again, another reason to do that detail work. Now to assemble this motor, I've used mostly scale hardware from Locked Up RC. This is 1/64th size actually, and that is because these are leftovers from a set of the scale hardware I used to assemble a set of method beadlocks from Vanquish. So I used some of those to add a little bit more detail to it. There's 4 screws along the side of the valve cover, 4 down the center, and then 4 on the other side. On the bottom, you'll see that there's 5 screws that hold on each of the intake or exhaust manifolds. All of those kind of go in at an upward angle so that you can put them in without having to get interference with that particular manifold. And then the head bolts to the block, the transmission bolts to the top and bottom half of the block, and then the block bolts together with 2 screws per side. Now, I don't have any front accessories on this particular motor. That's because in the Unimog, that is backed up against the backside of the electric motor that runs the vehicle. So you weren't going to be able to see that, so I didn't feel like putting a ton of detail into that. Now, the plan for this project the whole time was just to have a motor to install inside of my Unimog here. It was a fun project, so I spent a lot of time on it. And in the end, I got the result that I was looking for. A basic motor to fit in the back of my project, that would get me the scale points that I needed. Now, after that, the project was just kind of going to sit, and I really have no intentions of producing parts on my 3D printer for others. I'm just not really that interested in sitting up there and letting that thing run. So what I decided to do was upload all the files to Thingiverse as well as Shapeways to allow you guys to either download them and print them on your 3D printer, a friend's 3D printer, somebody you know's 3D printer, or go to Shapeways and order them through there. Shapeways does allow vendors to upload their parts then for you to buy them off of there, and it gives a percentage of those sales to the vendor, whoever it may be. Now, I didn't do that. You could go download the parts from Thingiverse and upload them to Shapeways on your own, and you would get the exact same price as if you went to my storefront and bought them off of there. I have no markup on them whatsoever. Any money that you do spend on Shapeways only goes to Shapeways. I get $0 off of that. So I'm not trying to make any money off of you guys, just throwing it out there in case you would like to buy something like this on your own. I actually ordered an engine off there as well for myself because they 3D print with a different technology than I do, and it gives you a really nice smooth outward appearance. So I decided to order one myself. The total cost was around $56, I believe, shipped. And that was because I also changed up the materials a little bit. I stayed with a black block and black oil pan, but I went with an aluminide or a metallic style cylinder head, and then a red polished valve cover, as well as aluminide or metallic for the rear transmission cover, both of the intake and exhaust manifolds, as well as the turbo. We'll see how it looks when it shows up. Thought it'd be worth a shot. Thought I'd like to see exactly how their print quality was. And this way, at least I could show you guys what it would look like if you decided to go order off of their site. But that's about all I've got accomplished. Trust me, it was actually a lot of work, even though in the end, it's this tight little compact version of an engine that I ended up creating. So that's what got done. Since it took an entire week, I thought I'd throw out a video, show you guys exactly what was going on here in the shop. But with that, we'll see you guys on the next one.